So let's start with a little kind of a little conversation, um, and probably some definitions. This varies, and psychologists debate this between themselves a little bit. So there isn't a completely hard and fast rule, but I think a very good practical way to about it when we to look at it is if we talk about a few different terms: embarrassment, guilt, and shame, which are all kind of related to each other. And embarrassment is really about other people seeing me doing something bad. So it's about other people's judgments of us, our concerns of other people's judgments of us. Um, Guilt is about our judgments of ourselves doing something bad. And shame is about our judgments of ourselves being something bad. So it's like an internalized, we're not talking about the behavior, we're talking about ourselves. And I feel as though to varying degrees, when we move our bodies, we experience embarrassment, guilt, and shame. So I'm going to talk about them all a little bit together. Um, but embarrassment and guilt and shame often lose a lot of their power when they're spoken out loud. So I'm going to encourage us to use this time in this safe space. If anyone is brave enough to share some of their stories about feeling embarrassed or feeling guilty or feeling ashamed when they move their bodies. I've got a little Brené Brown quote. We know Brené Brown is the wonderful shame and vulnerability researcher, and I think shame and vulnerability are here in this session. And the quote is from The Gifts of Imperfection, page 9 and 10. And she says, "Shame hates it when we reach out and tell our story. It hates having words wrapped around it. It can't survive being shared. Shame loves secrecy. The most dangerous thing to do after a shaming experience is to hide or bury our story. When we bury our story, the shame metastasizes." And then in this incident, Brene Brown is talking about an experience where she felt really shameful and really embarrassed. And she says, "I remember saying out loud, I need to talk to someone right now. Be brave, Brene." Because Brene is like most of us. We don't like sharing our shame and we don't like being vulnerable. So for me, this particular E is very close to our sense of body image and our sense of our relationship with our body. And we're going to talk about body image. We're going to do a whole webinar series on body image. But interestingly, most of the TSCers are women. And we do know from research that if we look at areas where women of all shapes and sizes, of all ethnicities, experience the most shame, the number one thing is weight. So if I think that a lot of us are going to be in this boat, and what I'm encouraging us to do now is to see if we can, in the chat box, share some of our stories of embarrassment or guilt and shame. And if you're not willing to share, please be somebody who creates that safe space and shares some non-judgmental support for the people who are brave enough to comment.